You are listening to the Lesbian Review podcast, a podcast spin-off of the popular review website, thelesbianreview.com. I'm Sheena, and I've been joined today by Anna. Anna is one of the newest reviewers on the site, and today we are talking about books that we want as movies, a subject that's near and dear to Anna's heart. You see, I choose a topic based on the interests of my guests, whether or not we have covered them before in the show, and whether or not I have suggestions that I feel can do this list justice. So, Anna, why did you want this particular topic?
Well, I like this particular topic because I work in LA, I work in post-sound editorial, so I get to see a lot of film and television topics come through my line of work. And honestly, as much better as we are getting about getting lesbian representation, I don't see it as a focal point where it's like the lesbian character is usually put off to the side as like a secondary character. Very rarely is it the primary character, and when it is, we fall into that kill your gays trope a lot nowadays as well. So I started reading a lot of books because I was tired of scrounging around trying to find decent visual material for films that showed me this positive representation. And once I started reading, I actually found a lot of books that I was like, oh, hey, that would make a cool movie, or that would make a cool series. And so that's why I came up with this list, because I really thought, hey, if I can't do it because I don't have the power to do it, but I know a lot of people, and maybe if they hear this podcast, they'll be like, hey, she's got a bright idea. Let's do this, What were those books again? And everything like that. So
I think it's a great idea. And we're either killed off, we're never really main characters, but if we are main characters, we tend to be bad guys, like...
Yes.
Or the messed up people like Monster, for example.
Right, yeah. I actually, when I was in grad school, I did a history of cinema class, and I actually did a paper that showcased how, when the Hays Code was in effect back in the early, 19th century, early 20th century, when films were being made, they had to villainize homosexuals to actually keep them in the films. Otherwise, we would have lost representation altogether once the Hays Code came down. And unfortunately, we're still, while the Hays Code rules and regulations have been kind of thrown out the window, we still abide by the rules of it, either consciously or unconsciously, when we are dealing with homosexual representation in films today. So I like the idea of doing it away with it, period. And trying to show people, hey, we're not bad guys. We're actually very normal people who just love, people of our same sex. And we want to have a normal life like everybody else. Family, friends, fun, Why aren't we allowed to have that? So
absolutely. And the more we can see positive representation in media, the easier it will be for young LGBT people to come out and to be okay with themselves. I mean, I think media plays such a huge role in just self-acceptance. When I was coming out, I had a hell of a struggle. And my family's not even particularly not accepting or anything. It's just that I didn't see myself represented. And the only representation I did see was of a negative kind. I didn't want to be that strange woman down the block who was, having an affair. I wanted to be the good guy. I wanted to be the hero of the story,
Right, yeah. I grew up in Arkansas, which is about as southern as you can get in the United States, and it was the same deal. I had family members that were actually very supportive of me, but when going to school and, hanging out with my friends, I knew gay men a lot because it seemed to be okay, socially acceptable for them, but it wasn't necessarily socially acceptable for me, so I kind of hid it, and it didn't necessarily get me into trouble, but it made me very confused about my feelings for a long time, and confusing it with, okay, a girl likes me, but she only likes me as a friend, but I would try to see it as something more. And I think if I had that representation to go to, I think it would have definitely helped me a lot more in not necessarily the coming out process, but more acceptance of myself early on in my life.
Absolutely. And the more we can accept ourselves, the less other we feel, and the less others treat us, because we're accepting of ourselves. Yeah. So it's a whole thing. So I think this is a great topic, and actually one that's kind of close to my heart too. It's a difficult topic though, because not every book can successfully be transformed into a film.
Right. I I mean, I have a visual mind anyway. And granted, I will give you every book I read. I don't always be like, oh, this would make a cool movie. You know, we should do it. It definitely has to speak to me on all levels. It's like, is it a good story? Are the characters, you know, have enough depth to them? Do their, you know, surroundings, like the people and the secondary characters, the places they're going, are they all descriptive enough that if you put this in a film, people would get it totally right away? So yeah, I'm totally with you on that one.
Okay, so how this podcast works is I'm going to talk about my first selection, and then I'm going to read the synopsis from the book, and we're going to chat a little bit about it. Then Anna will discuss her choice, and we'll alternate until we have gone through the entire list. All the books we chat about today are in the show notes, including buy links. You can support us by using our links to buy our books, because when you do that, we get a couple of cents from Amazon. Alright, Anna, before we get into the actual list, which is very exciting, I want to talk about just a couple of things that I wanted to look at when I was choosing books. So I wanted something with a visual appeal, so something that immediately the storyline, the setting, whatever it was, something that grabs me visually, because film is a very visual medium, and unless you've got something pretty on screen, it can become quite dull.
I totally agree with you on that. I mean, as a sound person, some people would say I disagree with that, but I understand that sound supports the visual instead of, you know, overpowering it. So I totally understand that, definitely. That's kind of where I went with this, too.
It makes complete sense. Then I wanted a storyline that wasn't too internal. I know you can do internal films, but it's rare that you manage one well.
Yes. Internal films kind of fall into the independent categories for films for me, and it's definitely one of those, if you're not making sense, if you're not able to make sense on the screen, the audience isn't going to get it, and it's just going to not do well at all. So
Absolutely. An exception to this was something like The Girl with a Pearl Earring, which was a great film, but so tough to make. So I wouldn't want to put any lesfic through that. So I wanted something external with action happening. I wanted action. I wanted to see things happening on screen. Okay.
Right.
And I wanted one that was relatively easy to adapt. So something that wasn't such a big story that you can't turn it into a film, because what happens with books is there's a lot of story happening in those, 80,000 words, 60,000 words, whatever it is.
Right, yeah.
And to be able to squish that into an hour and a half, not so easy.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of, editing at the end when picture editors get in there. It's like, yeah, we may shoot the whole book, but we're going to cut some scenes out that aren't really moving the story along the way we want it to. So when you have a great picture editor, you can cut out a few things. So it's great.
Absolutely. But having said that, I wanted something, I'm approaching this from the point of view of lesbian films are not going to get the highest budget, so they're not going to be able to spend forever on it. So let's do something that's easily adapted. All right, so my first pick is Lethal Affairs by Kim Baldwin, and please forgive me if I butcher your name, Xenia, Alexia. It's the Elite Operatives Book 1.
Okay.
Okay. Wow, I think she's Greek.
I don't know. I'm taking your word for it. Here we go.
So this one is fantastic. Kim Baldwin does kind of action-y romances, and I just adore it. And I've been actually listening to her books steadily on audiobook, and they are brilliant audiobooks because it's a similar process to film, being able to read a book and sort of process the story to being able to create a movie, right?
Right.
So this one, it's full of action, it's got spies, it's literally got a spy school.
Oh, cool.
It's completely cool. This is the synopsis. Elite operative Domino is no stranger to peril and impossible situations. Trained all her life to be just as comfortable fighting terrorists as mixing with the gala crowd, she is proficient at playing any role necessary to accomplish her objectives and believes the cause sanctifies the means. But her latest assignment is to investigate journalist Hayley Ward. And it will test more than her skills, ingenuity and courage, because this time she faces the ultimate dilemma, a choice between loyalty and love. So there's explosions in this one, there's who's the bad guy really. It's just totally fun.
Yeah.
And I would absolutely recommend this, and it's also nice because it's the first book in a series, so you can go on to make a series of films.
There you go. Totally. Yeah, I mean, if anything that allows you to make a series, like to be able to make a franchise out of something and get that great, like, positive viewing of women, and not only just lesbians, but women in a cool position where they're like kicking ass and taking names. And I mean, I know a lot of people kind of gave Atomic Blonde a lot of flack, but I loved it. I thought it was amazing just to watch Charlize Theron kick some ass. And yeah, she got into a lesbian relationship and the girl died, but that's the Spy Game. That's how it works. So, but I totally see where you're going with this, and that's awesome. Well, I guess I will give you my first one as well.
Yes, but before you do, tell me, what criteria did you look at?
I looked at, also kind of the visually stunning is like, will this be visually engaging for the audience at hand? Even if it's just like, there's a couple in here that may not be overly complex in their story design and everything, but if they tell a good story, like if it's something that's just so engaging that you're like, I don't care if I don't see like vast landscapes and everything like that. If the story's good and it's keeping me engaged, that's what I like to see. It's like, so I do have a couple of basically conversation stories in here where it's like, you're focusing on the dialogue, which I still feel is important because, one thing we definitely like to do as women is talk a lot. And so it's great to see the broader aspect of like these women being together and doing stuff and solving crimes and making new lives for themselves. But it's also nice to see the intimate stuff between them that really drives what their relationship is built on. So that's what a lot of my criteria was when I chose these books and everything.
Well, if you look at a film like Bound's budget was relatively small. It was a small shoot. It was just a great story with, great dialogue. And
it pretty much took place in one apartment the entire time. And it's like, or one apartment building the entire time. Yeah. So, yeah, it's not like it needs to be like overly grand or anything. And I guess it all depends on what the story is you're looking for. It's like, if you're looking for an action story, like a spy story, like you just mentioned, yes, you're expecting to see explosions and who's the bad guy, mystery and solving all that. But if you're just having two women trying to figure each other out, you want something a little bit more intimate. And it could be like in a house, or it could be in an apartment, or like even sitting out by a lake or something like that. They're just...
Absolutely.
Totally. That's totally what it is. So.
Okay, so what's your first pick?
My first pick is kind of along the same lines. It's a actual suspense. And it's the first in the series. Well, technically there's only 2 in the series, but I'm pushing for her to make another one because she said she would. It's called The Killing Ground by Sid Parker. And this was actually the second book by Parker I ever read, and I was just like, oh my god, she totally needs to finish this series. So basically the synopsis is this. A serial killer is targeting pregnant women in Chicago. The latest victim is the wife of the FBI director, and it prompts a joint task force between the Chicago PD and the FBI. Detective Rebecca Fox represents the Chicago PD side, but she resents the intrusion, as well as the personal attention of one FBI agent, Jordan Gray. With no breaks in the case, the two women must work together and share information, but Rebecca will be damned if she'll share anything more than professional help with Jordan. This was great because I haven't seen a good or read a good suspense thriller type movie, and I love those since like back in the 90s. I mean, they're kind of hard to come by, and actually I'm looking forward to The Snowman when it comes out because I'm like, ooh, that's a good one. But this grabs you right off the bat because she starts you off right away with an attack, and it's on the wife of the FBI director, and the FBI director is a lesbian, which I loved because it shows there's a woman in this position, and she is a lesbian, and it's like, there's great representation for women all over this. Plus, you're in Chicago, which is very, rich in its, like, decor and scenery and everything, so you really get the feel of this is a scary type, case that's happening around them. So you have this great backdrop for the seediness of Chicago, as well as, there is a great twist to it that I honestly didn't see coming. And I'm usually pretty good at picking those out. And then I saw who the killer was. I was like, holy crap, and everything. I don't know if I can cuss on this, but that was basically my thought. Parker has always been good to me about the slow burn romance. You see the attraction immediately between the Rebecca and Jordan, but she stretches it like till at least almost halfway through the book. And when it does happen, you're just like, oh, thank God, you know, you're finally happy to see it happen. And then it's like, but it gets kind of, you know, screwed up because they're like, oh, we got the guy. Oh, wait, it's not the right guy and everything. So it definitely has a lot of those pieces of good filmmaking. You got a great backdrop, you got great characters, you got strong female leads, and you got great dialogue between not only Rebecca and Jordan, but everybody around them, their confidants, the people that they trust, their Jordan's partner as well, and it's just amazing to read. I mean, I only stretched it out over a week because I made myself stretch it out over a week because I was just like, I got work, I got to do other things and everything, but this is definitely one that you could sit down and really get sucked into, and I would love to see this put on the big screen. Totally.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like my kind of thing, hey? Okay, so my second book is Five Moons Rising by Lise McTagg. Have you read this one?
It's on my list. I swear it's on my list.
This one's a supernatural romance. Unknown to regular citizens, nightmarish creatures lurk in the dark underbelly of human civilization. The presence of these supers, werewolves, vampires, and demons, is a closely guarded government secret, as is the existence of a cadre of specially engineered hunters charged with exterminating them. Codenamed Malice, Hunter Mary Alice Nolan was genetically modified and rigorously trained to use her great strength, heightened senses, and killer instincts to track and eliminate supers who prey on the innocent. A loner by choice, her only real link to the human world is the close connection to her mother and sister, until the unthinkable happens. Rory Sampson has been a werewolf for more than a century and is comfortably situated as the beta of her peaceful pack, until she's betrayed by the woman she loves and an evil outsider massacres her alpha and his most loyal followers. Barely escaping with her life, Rory is forced to tread the perilous path of a lone wolf while vowing vengeance against the usurper and his minions. Although these two powerful women should rightfully despise each other, fate will soon compel them to join forces on a dangerous quest to avenge their loved ones, and will ignite a forbidden passion that neither of them ever imagined. Okay, so this one would have to be a little bit of a Hollywood blockbuster, just because it's going to require a lot of special effects, but...
Yeah, the budget on that would kind of explode because of that alone, just from what you're saying.
It would, but the way I would stand in queues for days to get tickets to see this film, because this is one of those...
Yeah.
It's one of those books that has me entirely captivated. And super tempted to fly across there, just chain Lise to her computer so she can write the next one already.
I think I've seen that threat to her a few times on Twitter. It's like, are you writing? Are you writing? Are you writing?
Yeah. I actually asked her the other day on Skype.
Darling.
You're not the only one that hunts down your favorite authors and like harasses them. So.
Yeah, I do. I try to be more like, diplomatic about it. It's like, hey, when's the next one coming out? And then I'm like, oh, it's coming. And I'm like, no, that's not good enough. I need an exact time frame, please. So.
Yep.
But yeah, I totally get that. No, and I could see that, it's like my sci-fi, fantasy pick was along the same lines, but I think in the one that I chose, the budgets could get a little out of hand, but not so much. Do you want me to talk about it right now, or do you want to talk more about...
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, for my sci-fi, I picked True Nature by Jay, which is the second one in the Nature series that she has. I like the first one, but I feel like the second one could actually reach a broader audience just outside of like the sci-fi fantasy geeks like me, because it does have a very well-rounded story that centers on family is more than just blood. And so that's what I thought was very appealing about it. And again, it takes you from like North Carolina up to New York, and it's like, well, there is shifting. It's not as bad as like, it kind of reminds me of True Blood, and it's like description of the shifts and everything. It's like they're very minimal, and they use like smaller, minimal characteristics like the eyes or growls or stuff like that to really highlight what it is. But I'll give a synopsis of this real quick. Basically, the synopsis is Kelsey, a wolf shifter, has fallen from grace after her pack attacked Jory, a seer for the Rasa community. As penance, she is part of the detail that guards Jory and her and her partner Griffin, Liger shifter, 24/7. When Jory has a vision of a teenage wolf being attacked by humans, she believes that Kelsey is the right person for the job and sends her on the case. On this mission, Kelsey discovers Danny is a deaf teenage wolf shifter who has been adopted by a human family. Danny has no clue as to what he is, and before Kelsey can explain it to him, he runs off to New York. With the help of Danny's adoptive mother, Rue, Kelsey must search the underside of New York City and find Danny before the humans from Jory's vision are able to carry out this devious intentions against him, and most importantly, before Danny makes his first shift into a wolf form. It's a race against time because, they have to find this kid and they have to, explain to him, try to explain to him what he is before it actually happens. And I love the interaction between Kelsey and Rue because, as in all Jay's books, there is an attraction between the two, but it's actually forbidden because Kelsey is, the shapeshifter, part of this community, and Rue is human. But, with the intensity of the search and trying to find Danny and make sure he's okay, things just kind of happen. And Kelsey is starting to wonder, is really the rules of the Rasa really need to be followed because she actually cares for this woman, even though she is human. So there's just a lot of great elements to it that I feel are very essential to not only telling a great story, but also engaging people outside of what people would look at this as like, oh, it's a sci-fi fantasy, I'm not interested in that. But it's like, no, there's actually more to this. It's like, yes, there is, the shape-shifting element, but they live in this world and they actually hide among humans. So the shape-shifting doesn't happen unless it's absolutely necessary. And you really get a good sense of what the core of this story is, which is about family and what it means to be a family, whether you're Rasa or human or something in between. And that's what I think would make this a really good flick for people to come and see.
Nice. This series has been on my radar for a while. I just haven't gotten around to it. But
yeah,
it sounds fab.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like the first one. I like Second Nature. I liked how it introduced the society and everything. But that one was definitely geared more towards, in my belief, like the hardcore sci-fi people who are just like, oh, this is a cool new world. These are cool new characters. This is what they do. This is what this means. These are the rules and blah, blah, blah. And this one actually allows, it's like, oh, well, I'm not a big fan of sci-fi, but I am a big fan of like family stories. So this could be that as well.
Awesome. Now we're going to shift gears away from the shifters.
Yes.
And we're going to join the pirates.
Oh, pirates now.
Arg.
Arg. I want to go on Pirates of the Caribbean now. Thank you for that.
So my third pick is The Sublime and Spirited Voyages of Original Sin. I hummed and hawed about which pirate book I was going to choose and decided on this one because it's actually just hilarious. So it's kind of a sweet rom-com, really.
Oh, nice. Just set on a pirate ship.
Pretty much, and it's adorable. It's hilarious and it's just funny, and the humor is easily accessible but smart enough to not just be sort of dick and fart jokes, and I could actually see this being a very, very cute film.
Oh, cool.
This is the blurb. The Gulf of Mexico, 1702. When pirates of the Square Rigger Original Sin steal ashore to abduct a doctor to tend to their wounded, they end up settling for the doctor's attractive fiancée, Celia, the town seamstress. Together with Gail, daughter of the wounded pirate captain, Madman Malvern, Celia becomes a reluctant participant in an unexpectedly thrilling journey through the Caribbean. For Gail, Celia's presence is at first a welcome and shapely distraction, but as her attraction to the seamstress deepens, she realizes that Celia comes to mean more to her than is almost certainly prudent. As Celia and Gail navigate the perilous territories of gypsies, prostitutes, mercenaries, and slave traders, they forge a partnership born of necessity that Gail soon hopes will veer away from insurmountable danger and instead detour directly to her bed.
Nice.
And there's just adorable elements to this, like at one point they're in port and they go see a gypsy and a gypsy tells them a little fortune, and just those kind of elements you can really see as being such a beautiful part of the film.
I I haven't gotten too much into the pirate genre yet. I mean, I just recently started being like, ooh, westerns are fun, and I started reading those a lot more. So I'm slowly making my way into the pirate area a little bit more. I'm getting there, because I do see some, and I'm like, that seems like a good story, and I just put it on my wish list. So it's slowly but surely getting there.
Well, this one was a book club pick, so Tara introduced me to it, and I was like, wow, this is a really long and convoluted name.
Right.
But then I pretty much read the first like 2 pages and I was entirely hooked, and then I stopped working and sat and read for the rest of the day, and that was the end of that. I was just like, this book is adorable. So
I love those kinds of books where you're just like, you're supposed to be working and you keep looking over at it and you're just like, I'm trying to work, and you look over at it. That's me sometimes. It's like, why do I have to work? I want to read.
Right? Why can't we just get paid to read books every day? Like, that would be the best.
I know, right? I totally understand that. Life would be so much better, and I would get so rich for doing that, Totally.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, my pick for around this time frame is called Kicker's Journey. And I'm probably going to butcher the heck out of this name, but it's by Lois Cloric Hart. I think I said that right. I'm going to go with yes, I said that right. This was actually the first book I ever read from her. And as soon as I read it, I was just like, I have to find out what other stuff she has done. So this might end up on another list, like at the end of the year, just letting you know and everything.
Oh, mysterious.
But, yeah, I know, right? It's like, what's going on there? Basically the synopsis is the story follows Kicker Stewart and her journey from the English countryside as a stable boy at a posh, England prep school, all the way to the Canadian wilderness, where she actually becomes kind of a pillar of the community with her lover and partner, Madeline Bristow. Madeline is a school teacher at the school that Kicker started working at, and basically, Madeline's desire is to flee the confines of her rigid upbringing and the freedom. She wants the freedom to love who she wants that will give. And so basically, she's like, we got to go to Canada, because she had a friend of hers move there, and she's like, they say it's great, we got to go there and we can be free and love openly and everything. And it's like, it's Madeline's impulsiveness that actually gets them there, but it will be Kicker's strong will and stability that will allow them to build a life and foundation together. Is what they want. I love how she describes England in this, and I love how she describes the wilderness of Canada, because this is like turn of the century, Canada and England. So a lot of things have not been developed yet. There's no cell phones. I don't even think there's like barely a train service, and everything. So there's really not a lot to go on, but it kind of a lot of ways reminded me of when I watched Tipping the Velvet the first time. Like, it's like you have kind of a part 1 of the journey and a part 2 of the journey, where it's like part 1, they're in England, they're falling in love, they're making this grand plan to escape, Madeline's father, and they're like everything society deems inappropriate and everything. And then part 2 is when they get to Canada, and Madeline starts slowly realizing it's not the big dream that she thought it was, but Kicker's like, we have to stay. If this is what we want to do, we have to stay. So Kicker becomes more of the voice of reason there. I love the fact that her name is Kicker. And I love how she got that name. I'm not going to spoil that. I'm going to tell people, read the book. You'll find out how she got the name. But it's just, it has that, broad look of, great scenery, great landscape that you can get like great like full panoramic shots of, and if they had the budget they could do 70 millimeter. I'm not saying they have to, but it will look great in 70 millimeter. And it kind of has that, no matter where you go, you're still dealing with the things of the times. Like you have your specific society roles, you have your class oppression, because Kicker's more of the lower class, Madeline's more of the upper class, and you got them to kind of trying to mesh, but also they're, conflicting no matter what happens and no matter where they go. And I just think it's a great story to show their journey, not only to get to Canada and start making a life, but their journey back to each other when things start kind of unraveling and not going as planned. And I love that. I love this story for that reason. So Canada also has decent budgets, so they could shoot up there pretty cheaply. Just throwing that in there.
Just in case you're wondering.
Yeah. In case anybody is listening to this, I know I had a few friends inquire about this podcast. This is what I'm telling you right now. So, I actually, when I read this book, I actually sent it to a few people I knew in the industry. I was like, you need to read this and then tell me what you think. I never heard back from them, but I'm not surprised. So, it's just like, whatever. But I have a feeling this could really make a great story and look really good on either the big screen or the small screen. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if BBC could get a hold of it too and just be like, oh, this would be awesome. You know.
That's true, actually. It's true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, why not, eh?
Yeah, totally.
Because, I mean, they did some really nice things with Tipping the Velvet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to stop there. I didn't like the other ones. So.
Yeah, I think I watched Fingersmith from them and I was like, yeah, okay, you know. I feel like could have done, yeah.
Have you read the book?
I have not read the book, but I hear the book is definitely better.
The book is amazing, and they just kind of killed it. And what they did with Tipping the Velvet, and I'm going to get lynched for this, but I actually think that they made Tipping the Velvet better, transferring it across. But to be fair, I actually watched it before I read it, so it could just be that.
Yeah, I usually find if I watch it before I read it, I tend to lean more towards what I watched, and I don't mean that to say that the book is bad. I think it's just because you have that visual in your head. But by the time you read it, that you're stuck with that visual, and that's what you're used to, and that's what you want to see when you're reading it as well. And if something gets added or changed or anything like that, once you finally read it, you're just like, wait, this kind of throws me off a little bit.
Absolutely. All right, so my fourth pick is Devil's Rock by Jerry Hill. This is another one.
I love that one. Love that book.
Yeah. This is another one that I listened to on audiobook, and it was just superb. Great narration and brilliant story. It's the story of two women who are trying to stop a serial killer, but it's not they're not the direct investigators. What they're doing, they're almost like a support team behind the scenes.
Right, yeah.
I thought that was fascinating. So it's not just like they're not actually doing the investigating per se. The one is using a computerized system to try and locate where the next bodies are likely to be dumped, and the other one is a local, I think she's in the sheriff's department, like a deputy sheriff or something.
Yeah, isn't it like they find a body by accident or something like that, and then, they end up being like, oh, well, we got to try and calculate where the next body is going to be, and they end up getting closer because of that, and they accidentally stumble upon, it's like the system worked, and it's like, oh, hey, there's a serial killer right there, that type thing, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much, but there's some romance going on. It sounds beautiful, like the descriptions of the desert.
Oh yeah, she does a great job. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just great visually. The one is an FBI agent, the other one's a cop, and it's always fun when the two pair up.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved everything about the story. It was entirely original, unique, and the chemistry between the women was amazing. The dialogue was fantastic. The events were interesting enough to keep me going, so I think that this will definitely make a really good film.
Totally. And it's like, I think it takes place in like Arizona area, right? So if you got a lot of red rock around there, that would look beautiful on screen. I always love going to that area when I can.
It says Sedona. I don't know where that is.
Yeah, that's Arizona. That's totally Arizona. That's actually where a lot of people go to see UFOs. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I'm going to just quickly read the synopsis, just so that...
Okay. Right ahead.
My ramblings make a little bit more sense. Two women vowed to bring a killer to justice. Deputy Andrea Sullivan had hoped to leave the horrors of Los Angeles behind her, but the serial murders of college students in peaceful, picturesque Sedona are her nightmare case to solve. The complexities stretch local resources to the limit, and the FBI joins the case with Agent Cameron Ross in the lead. Well, that's not entirely true, actually. The crime scenes are covered with the trademark signs of the fiendish Patrick Doe, whose handiwork has been investigated by Dallas detective Tory Hunter and others. But where Hunter failed, Cameron intends to win. She will break the case, find justice, and go home. No distractions. Unfortunately, Deputy Sullivan is very distracting, and Patrick Doe has other plans.
Of course.
And this was just a fantastic audiobook, so go listen to it, since, it's not a movie yet, but we can always hope.
Yeah, totally. Oh, man. Yeah, I need to go reread that one. I haven't read it in a while, but I do remember enjoying that, and the sequel to it as well. I did enjoy that one.
I've got that, I think, on audiobook. I haven't listened yet.
One thing I just love about, Jerry Hill's writing anyway, when she does novels like this, she's not afraid to shy away from, like, the gritty stuff. Like, I know some of her stories, especially when they involve suspense and, mystery, there are a couple of rape scenes. She doesn't get descriptive with it. She just says, pretty much implies that this is what happened. And I give her credit for not, totally shying away from somebody getting in that situation. It's like, it's about to happen, and then usually when people shy away from it, they're like, oh, good guys burst in just in time. Well, that's not always the case in this. And I actually find that to be a little bit more realistic in her writing. So it's like, I think it does help. I mean, yes, it's tough to read sometimes, but at the same time, it's like, that the person who's doing it, something's going to happen to them. So she does give, karma's a bitch. That's basically what I gained from that. It's like, she's going to write this, but then the bad guy's going to have something bad happen to him. So it's all going to work out in the end with that and everything. So.
I love Jerry Hill's writing, and I love kind of horror type stories as well.
Right, yeah.
And in fact, I beg her for more horror stories whenever I can, because I just love...
Yeah. I remember Keepers of the Cave, Weeping Walls. I thought those would make great movies as well.
Absolutely.
Totally. It's like, that'd be a good Halloween one, people. Come on. No, we're picking these up. We're here. We're telling you these. Come on. Totally.
And I almost picked those, but then I decided that I liked this one. It's tough to choose the top 10 list. It really is.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, it was hard for me just to choose 5 to talk about today of the top 10. I was like, which ones do I want to do? So, my next one is actually more of a comedy. And so getting on the little lighter side. And it's called Bridesmaid of Honor by Grayson Morgan. This did not start out as a series, but it ended up being a series. And for those of you who are like, damn, all these series, I'm sorry right now, but it wasn't my fault. These are just great books, great reads, and I think they would make great movies. That's my opinion. But here is the synopsis of this one. Britton Prescott's best friend is getting married, and she's the maid of honor. What her best friend failed to mention was the fact that her cousin Daphne was going to be a bridesmaid. The same cousin that has been Britton's nemesis since they were in high school. As if that isn't enough to deal with, Britton's sister announces she's getting married in the same month, and her maid of honor is none other than her best friend Daphne, the same woman that has tormented her sister for years. Britton has to suck it up and play nice instead of scratching her eyes out because she and Daphne are in both weddings. Everyone is counting on Britton and Daphne to behave like adults and put the past behind them. No one expects to find them wrapped in each other's arms in the most inopportune time. I read the synopsis like, I have to read this because this just sounds fun in so many ways. And I was not disappointed. I mean, this is one I still go to every now and then because I was like, I need to pick me up. I need to read something funny. This is what I'm going to go to. And basically, it's a good enemies to friends story. Friends with benefits in a lot of ways. And this is one of those, it's not like, sweeping landscapes. I think it takes place in Rhode Island, of all places, which I don't know much about Rhode Island, but I know it's not very big. That's about all I know. But it's definitely one of those, there's a lot of great dialogue. They have a lot of great banter back and forth. Even when they actually start seeing each other, they're just getting to know each other on that different level. And it's great to just see this progression through their talks and through the people that are witnessing, these changes in them, but they're not really certain what's going on until the end when it's finally revealed, oh, they're actually seeing each other. And then it's like everybody starts being like, oh, when's the wedding? And they're like, no, we're not talking about that right now. But this is just a good little feel good, let's watch and see what happens to these two people that we've grown to like, and watch what they get into and try to get out of, and how they, sneak around and how they play off certain things. And it's just fun. It's just totally fun. For that
so this is a rom-com.
Yes, totally a rom-com.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which is Actually, funny, you and I have a very similar kind of selection in terms of the different themes that we decided to choose, which is actually very funny because I wasn't even looking at your list until now. And you didn't know what I was going to pick. And so I guess it's film people stuff. We just naturally gravitate to certain.
I mean, I do have my certain, styles that I like, that I'm like, oh, I must go see that whenever it comes out in movies. But there are certain things that if I see a trailer for, I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. It's usually not my cup of tea, but I think I'll go check it out anyway, because you never know. You might actually find a gem and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool, so.
Totally. The reason I say this is my last pick is a rom-com. and it's All I Want for Christmas by Clay Lydon.
Oh, I know that one. I don't think I read it, but I know it. So, because I've seen, it's like, I do Christmas stuff every year. I actually have a group on my Kindle that says Christmas holiday books and everything. So I keep looking for new ones to bring in every now and again. So yeah.
Oh, nice. But this is my favorite Christmas book. It's adorable. This Christmas, Tori Hammond is on a mission to find love. Her ideal present under the tree would be a shiny new girlfriend. So Tori gives herself 1 month to find that special lady by December the 25th. Christmas spells romance, and she's going to grab some. So what this blurb does not mention is all the hilarious dates and failed attempted romances that she tries in this quest for love. And only to turn around and see that love's been there all along. So it's entirely adorable. It's the dialogue is witty and so sweet, and the way Lydon writes about Christmas in London makes me want to go and experience Christmas in London, because it just sounds like the most magical, amazing thing.
It is pretty magical. I have friends over there, and I actually did go and visit them one year for Christmas. And granted, this was like 10 years ago, but it was just so magical to walk around and like in Leicester Square and Waterloo and all those places and see all the lights and all the pomp and circumstance they put up, and it was just so beautiful around. So yes, if you get a chance, go experience that and everything.
And if you can't, then read this book, because it'll take
there
you right
go.
there.
Totally. This is a good way to get it up on the screen, people. This would be a good Lifetime holiday movie type thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
It's like Imagine Me and You, but around Christmas, and
yeah, totally.
With no husband. So
yeah, no husband involved there. Yeah, let's not get that going. Oh my god, I do love that movie though. That was a cute little movie. I will say that.
Definitely. All right. So what are we ending your list off with?
We are ending my list off with Don't Call Me Hero. This is just such a good story, and it's such my favorite book from her, aside from Winter Jacket, that I was just like, I get so excited with. So the synopsis of this is, it's been over a year since Cassidy Miller retired from the United States Marine Corps, but tried telling that to her nightmares. She knew that coming back after 8 years in a war zone wouldn't be easy, but she underestimated the real difficulties of transitioning back to civilian life. War is hell, but the aftermath is endless. Looking for a fresh start, she's left her friends and career in Minneapolis to be a police officer in northern Minnesota. It's in the tiny town of Embarrass where she learns more about Julia Desjardins. I hope I'm saying that name right, because that's how it sounds in my head. The city prosecutor is cool, professional, and untouchable. But she and Cassidy have history, and Cassidy isn't going to let her forget that. For all their surface differences, Cassidy and Julia have more in common than they first realized. Both are reluctant to hand over their past to be judged and studied. But it might take someone just as damaged as the other to help each other cope with the skeletons in their respective closets. I just personally love this story. Linsky is just really good at dialogue, like really good dialogue pieces, no matter what she's writing. And this is one of those pieces where I was like, you don't need the broad landscapes, the big, showy scenes. This is about two people learning how to not necessarily not be damaged, but how to be less damaged and be together. And I wrote a review of this already, and I basically said to move past survival and get back to living is what I kind of characterized it at. And I still feel like this is great. They have great conversations between each other where they because they're both in law enforcement, they keep running into each other all the time at the courthouse and embarrassed. I don't know if that's a real town or not. I kind of want to look it up and see, just because that's just an interesting name. But they just really break down each other's barriers in a lot of ways. And it's just fun to watch, and it's fun to just hear this smart dialogue that's going between them. And there is a little bit of a case that they have to solve together, and it's just great to just go from very big with some of the stuff that we both have listed to something that's just very intimate and very, detailed to these characters, and just seeing them develop into something better than what they are when they first started out. And I love stories like this. These are just those great little stories like that. So.
Absolutely. And they tend to be the stories that'll touch your heart more than the big actions and
Exactly. I mean, I like big action movies, and I love. It's like I got a guilty pleasure with the disaster movies, because I know I can go in them sometimes and just turn off my brain, because it's like I'm looking for fun. This is one I go see for fun. But it's like, these are the ones that I really like. I'm like, oh, I'm actually in the mood to think about, stuff and see where this goes. Let's go and see this one.
Fabulous. Anna, that was a fantastic list. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. And I'm going to go get coffee soon, so I'll be so much better after today.
Thank you for tuning into the Lesbian Review podcast. I'm Sheena, and I've been joined today by Anna. You can read our book and movie reviews on thelesbianreview.com. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to be part of the conversation, then come join us on our Facebook group, the Lesbian Talk Show Chat Group. Before you go, I have an urgent announcement. I need you to rate this podcast on iTunes, because the more ratings we have, the more listeners will be able to find us. That's all for now. Bye.
Bye. Check. 1, 2. We are ending my list off with Don't Call Me Hero. Yes, I got the title right this time.
Is it terrible? I haven't watched Atomic Blonde yet.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, sorry I spoiled that for you.
That's okay. I want to watch it, but they released it really short, like for a week here, and then it's gone. So
yeah,
I'm like,
I understand. Totally. Okay.
So I need to wait for it to.
Well, now you know what to expect. So don't get upset or anything like that. But it's really just fun watching her kick some ass. Period.
But Charlize is near and dear to my heart, being a born and bred South African. In fact, she comes from the same sort of part of Joburg that Tamara, my wife, comes from. So.
Oh, cool. Awesome. The city prosecutor is cool, professional, and untouchable. Untouchable.
All right, you may start recording.
Yay!